Let me tell you about the time that me, my mom, and my sister were refused a visa to the US and what you can learn from that experience. Picture this, 2001 in Nigeria, and we get a notice telling us to show up for an interview. My dad lived in the US and at this point I believe was already a US citizen and filed for us to get a V visa to the US. We went to the interview, right? You have to prepare for your interview. We had the documents and we took our bus ride from Anambra State to Lagos State because of course that's the only embassy at the time. So we got on the bus, drove I think 6 to 8 hours from Anambra State to Lagos State, and we get to the interview and the officer was a woman and she had us sit down. My mom asked my mom a bunch of questions and basically looked at the documents that my mom brought. Of course, she brought like birth certificates, marriage certificate, all those things, and some pictures of her and my dad. So the officer looks through the documents, looks through the pictures, and stops at the pictures, right? She looked at all the documents, didn't say anything. She looks at the pictures, stops at the pictures. And she's basically like, why isn't there pictures of your husband with your kids in here? And my mom basically was confused because she thought the interview was more for her to prove her relationship with my dad, not really for the kids. So she told them, we have pictures at home. I just didn't think to bring it. And the officer refused us the visa because we didn't bring the pictures. And basically told us that we had to come back another day and bring the pictures with us. So she scheduled us for another interview and we had to take the bus ride from Lagos State now back to Anambra State because it wasn't like the interview was the next day. Plus, we had to go back to Anambra State regardless because that's where all the pictures were. So we had to take the bus ride back to Anambra State and wait for the next interview date. When we got the next interview date, we packed up. This time, my mom was like militant with it. She brought every single picture, every single album, everything that she can think of that had a photo of us and our dad in it and brought it to the interview because again, that was the only reason we were refused. So she thought, I'm going to just bring everything. We get there, this time it was a man, and we were shocked because it's not the same officer. We were expecting to see the same officer that asked us for documents, right? That asked for the pictures. We were expecting to see her sitting there, but no, it was a completely different officer. We sat down, my mom brought out all the photo albums and popped it on the table. She was ready, like she was ready. The officer that did the second interview didn't even look at the pictures. Like he didn't care about the pictures. He looked through the file, he looked through all the documents, the birth certificates, the marriage certificates, everything, and approved the visa on the spot, without looking at the pictures because it just wasn't important to him at all. So my mom was a little, miffed because she had to bring all those pictures and it wasn't the same officer. This new officer didn't care about the pictures, but at the same time was very happy that we were approved and don't have to go through that process again. Okay, so why am I telling you this story? Because there's a lesson to be learned in it if you were paying attention. We were refused the visa by the first officer because she cared about the pictures. The second officer did not even look at the pictures because he did not care. The other documents we had was enough for him to approve our case. How can you apply this to your particular case? When you are going to your interview, when you are filing your applications, include as many supporting documents as you can possibly include, because you never know which officer is going to be looking at your case. Is it the first officer that wanted the pictures or the second officer that didn't care about the pictures? You would not know, because you do not know which officer is going to get your file. You do not know which officer is going to, be the one interviewing you. So you want to make sure that you are stacking your application with as many supporting documents as possible. If you're filing a marriage-based case, you want to make sure that you are including evidence of your relationship, pictures, everything. If you've done trips together, if you have bank accounts together, if you have houses together, you want to include all of that, because you want to make it so that the officer that's looking at it has a full picture of your life, right? And if you get the officer that doesn't care about the pictures, that doesn't care about the bank account, that's great. But what if you get the officer that cares about the bank accounts and cares about the pictures, and there's none of that in your application? Lesson here: be over prepared. Okay, be over prepared. Include more documentation that you may think is necessary. This is what I do for my clients. Okay, we have a checklist, and I tell them, listen, when it comes to especially a marriage-based case, we include as many things as possible. I remember one case we included their Netflix account, because that's what they had, right? You want to include as many things as possible because you want the officer, whoever the officer is, to have enough evidence in there to approve your case. You don't want them to have you come back for another interview or send you a request for evidence after your interview. You really do not want that. And if you're in the US applying for a green card or a removal of condition, I-751, you want them to have so much documentation that they just waive your interview. They're like, you know what? We have enough here to just approve this case. We don't need to have them come in for an interview, right? You want that. So you really want to include as many documents as possible. Remember, it's better for the officer to be like, oh, they have so much things together, than the officer to look at it and be like, yeah, there's not even enough here. Let's schedule them for an interview and ask them all these super hard questions, right? And then secondly, when it comes to the interview, you want to also be over prepared. That's why I have a whole video on how to prepare for a marriage-based interview, because you want to know what type of questions that may be asked to you, right? You may get the officer that only asks you 1 or 2 questions, but you may also get the officer that wants to ask you every single thing about your life together. And you need to be mentally prepared to have those conversations with the officer. So the moral of the story is be over prepared. Have more documents than you think is necessary, that shows your relationship, that shows that you qualify for this visa, and be ready to have an officer look at them and be able to make a full decision based on those documents. And if you have found this video helpful, don't forget to like this video, and please tell me below which officer would you fall into? The officer that wanted to see the pictures, or the other officer that saw the birth certificates and was like, this is enough? Tell me below.